Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are on the planet. Clark Gruey from Rainmaker here. It's a pleasure for me to be with you again and to be interviewing my good friend Hugh Fraser from Hugh Fraser International. He's based in Dubai usually, but he's in Abu Dhabi for ADIPEC. I'll get that squared away in my mouth here, Hugh, in a second. But really good to talk to Hugh. I'm here in London right now, as you may be able to see from my background, and we're doing a lot of work in this part of the world, or this side of the ocean, if you will, as we work with more and more companies, Hugh, from the UK, who are looking at opportunities in the Middle East, in the GCC region, and also those companies in other parts of the world, whether it's the US or Canada. Other parts of the world that are looking to come into the market and to be active in the Middle Eastern market. As many people know, in the energy space, the Gulf region is such a critical element, a critical component to the industry globally. And many people, of course, have looked at ADIPEC, the oil and gas show in Abu Dhabi, as one of the preeminent shows, certainly if not right up there with OTC in Houston. I think, Hugh, sometimes a lot of comparisons are made between OTC and ADIPEC, and you, of course, have been to both probably many times. So maybe for the audience, Hugh, just give us a little bit of a comparison, if you will, between, say, OTC and the show, the ADIPEC show in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, good afternoon, Clark, and thanks very much for the invitation to today's event. ADIPEC, I think, has just gone through a record-breaking week. I'm being told the numbers are something like 150,000 delegates, so it really is just stretching out their way ahead of the pack now. And I think, with no disrespect to OTC and the likes of offshore Europe, from my home city of Aberdeen, I really think ADIPEC really now has just streaked ahead. Every year we go, it just seems to be becoming more and more powerful. And the program, it's not just petroleum, it's energy, it's the energy transition. There was literally just too much to take in. A completely fantastic event.
Excellent. Well, it's interesting, isn't it, how as these events, as we've seen various events offshore Europe, and the event in both Stavanger and Aberdeen that goes back and forth across the North Sea. There's a big event in Calgary, of course, and other places of the world. But ADIPEC seems to just continue to gain momentum, and it is fascinating, Hugh, as we've become so accustomed to that region being an oil and gas powerhouse, of course, of production. And of course, many of us are speaking about doing energy differently, doing the transition of energy onto more efficient, or more, if you will, more environmentally friendly ways. ESG is talked about all the time. How is that message being received, I suppose, in the Gulf region? Is it, and how are the energy companies there embracing ESG?
Yeah, it was a key topic. There is absolutely no doubt that the governments, the national companies here, are absolutely invested, committed in their petroleum sector, as well as the energy transition technologies. But there was a very, very strong emphasis on technologies which decarbonize the petroleum sector to the maximum extent. Maximum energy, minimum emissions was one of the key themes at the opening ceremony on Monday. From a social point of view, there's a very, very strong policy drive towards in-country value, localization, which of course has at its core employment of the local population. So the ESG theme, very, very prominent.
And it's fascinating, I think, Hugh, as we talk about these different marketplaces. And when I was in Cape Town as well, it's a matter of balance, I think. I'm sure you agree that it's not stop producing energy. I think it's really a matter of how we produce it, perhaps where we produce it, and how it's transported. Is that the same messaging happening there?
Very much so. Again, one of the key themes throughout the week was the concept of integrated energy. We need everything. We need LNG and gas, which is abundant in the likes of Qatar. We need solar. We need offshore wind. We need nuclear. The UAE has recently installed its first nuclear facility in the region. 3 of the 4 reactors are now on stream, and they see nuclear as a very significant part of their mix going forward. So I think the kind of us and them that we see sometimes in the West between the petroleum sector and the renewables and clean energy sector doesn't really exist in this region.
Yeah, and I guess that's the interesting evolution of the energy industry is it is our energy companies, the ones that have been in oil and gas for years, that are quite typically investing in the renewable space as well, and even in the nuclear space. Are the nuclear players, do you think, Hugh, are they coming more from the power production side of the house, or are there some oil and gas production players that are also moving into nuclear?
No, I think it is a distinct sector in its own right. The nuclear sector in Abu Dhabi was really constructed by the Koreans. So it is very much a standalone industry, but very much integrated into the power generation mix. And the UAE's 2050 national energy strategy sees nuclear as providing 6% of the UAE's power generation capacity.
Yeah, it's an incredible shift, isn't it? As we move towards nuclear. Nuclear has been around, of course, for a long time. It's nothing new. Are the plans to build large nuclear reactors? Or are we talking about the smaller units?
The 4 reactors that are in the region, 3 are on stream, 1's coming on stream, are 1,400 megawatts. But there is, I think, genuine interest in small modular nuclear reactors. And I know that was a very big topic when I attended the Global Energy Show in Calgary in June. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly one of the technologies that Canada is hoping to really get its arms around and be a major exporter of SMR technology. And I think the Middle East will be very receptive to that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's and I guess it's always an interesting debate around nuclear, whether we're talking about small units or large units. It's a difficult discussion sometimes, but obviously a very clean source of power and a way to produce a lot of power, quite rapidly. And I know here, or just south of here in France and Germany, there's a lot of discussion, between those 2 countries about the nuclear requirements for energy as well. Moving on then back to oil and gas, Hugh, because of course we know the oil and gas reserves are so significant in that region. If you were to compare natural gas to oil, as far as where everybody's going and where people are investing, is there a balance of both, or is there more of a bent towards natural gas these days? Is that what seems to be the talk? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think oil production remains at very, very high levels, particularly in Saudi Arabia. Also, Kuwait and the UAE are major oil producers as things stand. But on the other hand, Qatar has recently announced a mega $30 billion investment in its LNG industry, which will see Qatar regaining the LNG global crown back from Australia and the States, kind of nudged ahead of them. But they will retake that lead thanks to that massive LNG project, which is being developed over the next 7 or 8 years.
Okay. And Hugh, will much of that gas then go to Europe, I presume? Is that the idea behind that?
I think it will go both to Europe and to Asia. As you know, the Qatar internal market is tiny. It's all about exporting, and it's a major export objective for the Qataris to ramp up. I think it's 126 million tons per annum of LNG they will be producing by the end of this decade.
Wow. So that's going to be a phased project that gets built by 2030.
Absolutely, and the supply chain clearly is benefiting from this. Only about a week ago, Saipem, the Italian contractor, secured a record $4.5 billion contract award from the Qatar Energy Group, and that shows you the scale of what is happening in the region.
Wow. Yeah, it is quite impressive. The demand for these products is still very much increasing. Actually, it's not actually decreasing. So the sources are so important. And as we see in some other markets, maybe some of the more developed ones, there's not as much production increases on the books. There's not as much. The U.S. are slowing down. Their increases that were ramping up quickly. Canada, the UK, and so on. The Gulf really does play an important role in trying to meet the world's demand for energy.
Yeah, again, one of the major themes was, literally the crisis which has come out of underinvestment in the petroleum sector following the 2014 oil price crash. But both Saudi Aramco in Saudi Arabia and ADNOC in Abu Dhabi are both committed to raising their production by 1 million barrels per day over the next 5 years. So petroleum sector isn't going anywhere in the MENA region. It's going to be there for decades to come, and it will be part of the mix of the energy transition.
Yeah. Well, and Hugh, I know that I know you've met with a number of companies as they're coming into the market there this week, and of course you have such strong ties to the Scottish companies, and of course Rainmaker has a lot of connection back to Canadian companies and U.S. companies and so on. What have been some of the highlights there? You've obviously met with some companies. Are you seeing some unique service providers or new technologies coming out of these markets?
Yeah, it never fails to surprise me, having been in the market, the sector for 25 years. You think everything must have been invented, but innovation just rolls on. The technical conference was I think the highlight, frankly, of the ADIPEC event this year. The technology is just pouring out, and the important thing, my personal view, is that you have to bring an advanced technology into this market. It's a mature market. It's extremely competitive, and I think to succeed in the Middle East region, you've got to arrive with something that is definitely got its USPs, its very clear-cut advantages and benefits. And the advantage of bringing that is you will be in the running for what we call a single source contract from the NOCs, and that avoids being in the kind of multiple competitive supplier vendor registration process, which the NOCs largely go by. And that becomes a very price-sensitive, very competitive marketplace to be operating in. So it is the advanced technology providers who are the ones who are cutting through that and succeeding.
Okay. Well, this gets into some of the more of the tactical and the strategies for coming in the region. So for companies who do have a real technological advantage, how do they actually come into the market? Like, what are some of the do's and don'ts? I've heard you speak about this many times, and you're the expert on this, having guided so many companies into the region. But what are some of the do's and don'ts when they come into the region? Maybe some of the pitfalls that you've seen other companies unfortunately hit in the Gulf region, and how do they actually have success in getting to these NOCs?
I think the critical issue from my point of view is to accept that the way to penetrate the market is through strong local partner collaborations and joint ventures. And I would strongly recommend these are constructed on a territory by territory basis, not regionally wide. If you're trying to penetrate Qatar, find the best possible available local partner. The same for Abu Dhabi, the same for Oman, the same for Saudi Arabia. And the right local partner is, in my view, the key to success. They know the market, they know the clients, they know the vendor registration processes, they know these nuances that we just can't pick out of the manuals and the books and the how to do it guides. They're absolutely invaluable in my experience in supporting market entry ventures from new technology providers. And some of them are very, very receptive, very willing, very keen to get involved in joint ventures where they're promoting advanced technology. And these players are becoming more and more well known to us through relationships we've had with our clients and other connections we're aware of. And there is no doubt in my mind that selective, well-structured, well-directed joint venture and collaboration arrangements with local players is the way forward.
Well, and that's and I guess the other part of that, just to go a bit deeper, Hugh, of course, you hear about agents who can represent you in market, but then what you're talking about here is, it sounds to me like more of a proper partnership, if you will, with another company who's not necessarily an agent, but already providing something complementary in the market, and they're going to bring your technology in. Is that what you're saying? Is that kind of the more effective strategy?
Absolutely right, Clark. And I have to say, I think I'm increasingly agnostic that maybe some of the more traditional agency type models simply are not going to work going forwards. Local presence is everything in the market, and the attempt to sell in products, even more services from a remote location, I just don't think it works these days. There is increasing focus on in-country value localization policies, and I think it's increasingly hard, if not impossible, to penetrate these markets from afar. I think presence really is everything. There's always exceptions. I've heard of some very highly specialist in-demand software providers have perhaps had an easier time for obvious reasons. These are very readily exportable capabilities. But by and large, I think local presence is absolutely key.
No, it's a good point. And I don't think that's necessarily that unique, to the Gulf region. If you're, companies, I remember years ago when I was working for the British government, taking companies into Aberdeen. I mean, you still needed local presence. It was not that, it wasn't that didn't matter. It mattered there. It matters in Canada as well, that you have some connection to the local marketplace. It builds trust. It builds a degree of confidence in the particular technology as it comes into market. So it's a good point. And it would be no different in some other markets, I think, than there. I think it maybe feels different sometimes for Westerners to coming into the Middle East, because it's a different culture, right? We're walking into a culture that's a little bit peculiar to us, not from any stretch, just trying to understand it really. And I know the multiple times I've been down there and thoroughly enjoyed, the whole UAE and the culture around it. It's just different. It's a matter of building trust in a different culture. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if anything, it's probably just even stronger in this region, the concept of local presence and relationship building. It's extremely well known for that. You are mixing cultures. It's not Scots trying to penetrate Houston or Canadians trying to penetrate Aberdeen. There are cultural differences, language-wise, religious-wise, as well as regional differences. And I think these things really can be done the right way and done the wrong way. And it's great to see. I think we're getting better at it. I think companies are definitely being more switched on to the needs. What is needed to penetrate the market. But I'm not going to say for 1 minute that it's an easy market to penetrate. Far from it. It's the Energy Industries Council, based in London behind you, are quoting a $1 trillion energy market now in the Middle East. But it's a very competitive, price-sensitive market, and to tackle, to access these opportunities, it's demanding for sure. Absolutely.
And to move a little bit, I guess, beyond oil and gas a little bit, Hugh, like there's other needs, other infrastructure needs as well, I think, in that region. And move even as you watch the cities develop their own paths forward, as we've watched Abu Dhabi and Dubai kind of rise out of the desert in the last 50 or 60 years. I'm presuming that creates opportunities for companies who are in infrastructure, who are in engineering of roads and bridges and tunnels and all these things. Is that also happening in the Gulf?
Yeah, absolutely. And a very good example of that is the plans to create a pan GCC high-speed railway. So that's a very exciting project, and I thought that perhaps in the near future we can have a high-speed train from Riyadh to Muscat in Oman. It's quite a fantastic concept for sure.
Yeah, wow, that would be much safer than that highway between Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Fantastic as that drive is. Very good, Hugh. This is all really good information. I guess I'm just looking to see if we have any questions coming in, but because I could sit and ask you questions about the Middle East all the time. We have a number of companies that are quite intrigued by this market. I know you went by the Canadian pavilion today and talked to a few folks there and got their perception, I suppose, a little bit about the show, and were you able to get any anecdotal information from them on how they were perceiving the opportunities at ADIPEC?
Yeah, I think really it was back to really reiterating, I think, their view that it must be an advanced technology business, which is committed to local partner relationships and local presence, which are succeeding. There's companies such as Enerflex, a company I helped into the UE in 2006. Great to see the scale they're at, for example, now. What are we, 16 years further on from that?
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's always great to talk to these companies and see where they're at along that journey. You're right, Hugh, it can take a long time, and it takes, in some cases, folks like Enerflex, with the size that they are, it seems a little bit easier, but they still take their time to get there. We had another webinar actually yesterday that Casey hosted and the team here about the Can Export program, and as these companies are exploring the market and trying to get the advice they need from folks like yourself, Hugh, we decided we would do a webinar on how to use that program to do that. And of course, Hugh, that we talk to companies all the time about applying and getting some support funding to get out and get to these markets, that was well received yesterday, and it's also available on our channel here. But I think the one thing that it reminds me of these companies that are not quite the Enerflexes of the world, the commitment required for a market like the Middle East or other ones afar. In my opinion, it's almost a waste of time to go down there, just for ADIPEC. It's as great as it is. You really need more persistent commitment to the market, in my opinion, on that, Hugh. What do you think?
Couldn't agree more, Clark. And to be honest, perhaps I have been, I mentioned to my colleagues, the Scottish companies, that it just doesn't work to show up at ADIPEC once a year, perhaps with an intermediate trip in between. That is not committing to the market, and I think that really is pretty now recognized. And anyone who has asked my opinion over the last 4 days, if I've said to them, if I had the impression I'm not prepared to make that commitment, I've asked them to think twice about putting the time and effort into it, because I would have to doubt that the venture will be successful. And I certainly don't have the copyright on the way to do things successfully in the region, but I would be very skeptical that a venture which was not committed to the local presence, local partner route would succeed.
Hugh, I got one question coming in here that is talking about more or less about legal structures and companies coming into that. Like, what I guess it's quick advice here, but advice on that and how you set up as a foreign company in a way that can protect you if something goes sideways.
Happy to do that. I mean, a model which we've been deploying in recent years, which seems to be working quite effectively, is to set up a 100% owned subsidiary in a free zone like the DMCC free zone in Dubai. It gives a very solid, secure focal point in the region, usually initially from a sales and marketing point of view. That's phase one. Phase two tends to be to build those local partner collaborations in the key territories. If it's Saudi, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Abu Dhabi, whatever, build out these relationships. And then phase three becomes okay if it begins to kick in Saudi or Oman. What more do you need in country? If you're going to be successful, you will need something in country, but the secret is to do it at the right momentum. Make sure the costs aren't mounting up, disproportionately to the rate of prospectivity on the sales line.
Okay, no, thank you for that. It's obviously often a question we get asked along the way, and of course I turn to you for those answers. I got another one here. How open are these oil and gas companies to trying new technologies, and what are the big pushes to create cleaner oil and gas production? So kind of two questions in there, but are the NOCs looking for or open to new technologies, Hugh? How are they seeing that? And then how much of the push is that towards cleaner production?
The answer is yes to both, very much so. Technologies which decarbonize, technologies which allow the likes of sour gas production to be done safely and efficiently. There's a huge sour gas problem in the likes of Abu Dhabi with its gas reserves. One caveat and note of caution I would say is I think it's far harder to try and persuade the NOCs in the region to be the pioneers with new technology. They are much more comfortable if they've heard their BP or Shell or Equinor or ExxonMobil have successfully used the technology in Europe or in North America. So it is that bit harder if you're coming in without IOC track record to come into the NOCs in the region.
Right. Okay. No, good point for sure. And it's always and I guess then there's also even I guess this goes back to what you said earlier about then how do you actually talk to them, right? And there's a process, there's a vetting process, and this is where a lot of the local presence is so critical to getting you on the list to even being heard with your technology. But of course, to your point, if our clients that are listening are selling a technology to an IOC currently that's having success, then that's a good calling card to bring into the Gulf region with the NOCs.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big prize in the Middle East is to crack Aramco for sure, Saudi Aramco. And we find that if there's Saudi Aramco approvals, vendor registrations, it becomes a badge of honor, which is far easier to sell it around the Gulf and the region to the other players.
Right. And most of that, that requires access into Riyadh, right?
Well, I guess mainly Duran on the eastern province side of Saudi Arabia, where it is based. But having said that, Saudi Aramco has got outposts in The Hague, in Aberdeen, and Houston, and they've got their eyes. They're scanning the market for technologies that they think would be useful for Saudi Aramco.
Okay, very good. Well, very good. Well, Hugh, we're coming to the end of our time here. Thank you so much for making time. I know the show is basically just wrapped up, and you're willing to hang out in Abu Dhabi a bit longer before you drive home to Dubai. So thank you very much for making the time. I'm hoping this was valuable to those watching out there on LinkedIn or on our YouTube channel. This will be available on our YouTube channel, and I'm sure Hugh Fraser International's YouTube channel as well. And we're here to help answer questions. So thank you, Hugh. Appreciate the time and the opportunity to chat with you.
Thanks very much, Clark. And I just thank you and your team at Rainmaker again. It was great to see you to get back out after COVID up to the Global Energy Show back in June. And it's certainly in my diary again for 2023. So I look forward to getting back to Canada and Alberta.
Excellent. Thanks, Hugh. We look forward to having you back. Of course, you're a wealth of knowledge for us on the whole region there, and we really appreciate this. All right, well, safe drive home tonight, and
you.
we'll be in touch soon. All the best, and thanks for joining us.